condolences and my tributes to the Vanua Wunda, Avusa Sawayeke, and the Vanua Mbetoro Rau, Avusa Waruta, on the passing of the Momo Tauke Sawayeke, Tatu Te Vita Namuira Momendonu, and earlier on, Momo Tauke Waruta, Tatu Epsai Unya Yawatora. So both chiefs were part of or past members of this August House, and more importantly, they were also instrumental in the process of nation building. I joined the chiefs of Mba and friends to thank them for their contribution to our province and to Fiji, and we send our condolences to the Vanua Wunda, the Vanua Mbetoro Rau, and in particular to their families. May they rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister and members of Cabinet, Honourable Opposition Leader and members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, I rise in the name of my Lord Jesus Christ, the Creator and Sustainer of this world and all its beautiful things, through His holy power, to deliver my third speech in response to His Excellency's address since my election to this House. In doing so, let me thank His Excellency, President of Fiji, for his most gracious address from my gracious heart, while praying for his good health and long life. Sir, we have been here in this House for 2 years now, and let us honestly ask ourselves whether we are doing what we ought to do or not. If we are doing what is required of ourselves, then I believe it is one way we are paying our fitting tribute to His Excellency and the people of this land. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will fail in my very sacred duty in this House if I do not remember, thank and pay my very special tribute to the founding fathers of our beloved nation and all the past governments of this beautiful country for their immense contributions. The fruits that we enjoy today is from the trees they planted during their times, and emulating upon inspirational legacy, it is our duty now to bequeath for generations to come. Let it go on record, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it is absolutely no denial on our part that we have diametrical ideological differences with the ruling Fiji First Party, but that does not and should not stop us from working in unison for the good of our country, if and when the need for the same arises. And I am hopeful that the government side will feel all their goodness, appreciate, recognize, and reciprocate accordingly by creating the adequate spaces for us in those processes. History and success stories of bipartisanship, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a living testimony how we have and what we can share and care in the process, thwarting off challenges to achieve the extraordinary or the extra mile. If we miss or deny ourselves this opportunity, I believe we are doing a great disservice and injustice, not only to the mandate we have, but also to the future generations whose future we are seen to be compromising. Therefore, I call upon the government side to come out of its myopic mindset and learn to look at the bigger picture. Mr. Speaker, sir, the President of Fiji, who is also the Commander-in-Chief, symbolizes the unity of the nation, and I believe this is the best tribute we can pay to His Excellency should we learn and commit ourselves in working together in bipartisan processes. So much so, Mr. Speaker, sir, that even the former leader of the opposition had to sacrifice himself on the first day of this session of Parliament to allow us to come together and work in unison for this nation. The same goes to my party, where democracy is alive, well and at work, but it appears we are working ourselves. That brings me, Mr. Speaker, sir, to pay my tribute and express my sincere gratitude and thank my former leader, Honorable Major General Sitiveni Rumbuka, for his selfless service and personal sacrifice for our nation. It was my sheer privilege to be inducted into politics under his able leadership in 2018. And I wish to dedicate my life in championing the ideals and principles he stands for, because that is the way forward for Fiji. Allow me, sir, to offer my good wishes to our new party leader, our new leader of the opposition, and also congratulate our two new honourable members of the House. I wish them all the very best of luck. May they have a fruitful tenure. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will confine my contribution in this debate to mainly issues pertaining to my portfolio as Senior Minister for Regional Development and Disaster Management. Allow me to begin by thanking the Honourable Minister for Rural and Maritime Development, also the Honourable Minister for Disaster Management and Meteorological Services for the work that they have been able to implement despite limited resources at their stake. That gives me the basis and reason, Mr. Speaker, sir, to call upon the Honourable Minister for Economy to give a serious thought to increasing the budgetary allocation for these important portfolios. With your indulgence, sir, allow me to begin with rural development. While acknowledging and appreciating the amount of work done for the rural areas by these and previous governments, there is still a lot to do. I will concentrate on what needs to be done and why it needs to be done. Firstly, as equal citizens before the law and taxpayers as required by the law, all Fiji citizens are expected to receive a fair share of accessible, open and accountable governance. That is not the case now, as the rural government stations will still face a number of problems due to paucity of funding and the red tape bureaucracy involved in public service to render efficient services to the people in the rural areas. Secondly, sir, the attitude of our civil servants providing customer service to our people must change. They should be reminded they are not doing them a favour, but simply doing the work for which they are paid for by the people. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, sir, this government has come into power with a truncated mandate of 50.02%. After making a number of promises to the people in the areas some case, the Minister for Rural and Maritime Development to divulge to this House for the benefit of the rural and maritime communities of this country is the process and procedure involved in seeking assistance in cash and kind or technical assistance for community development projects by way of grants and sponsorships. I have deliberately meant to raise this question because there are some rural and maritime communities which have been signalled out for special community projects more than once, while other needy communities watch helplessly. I think all of us as elected representatives, and even all the people of this nation, should know these processes and procedures to empower themselves. The other point that I want to make, Mr. Speaker, sir, is developing strategic partnerships to empower rural and remote communities to build resilience, not only to thwart off the challenges posed by natural disasters and the impact of climate change, but also to sustain their livelihood with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Where have more than 135,000 people laid off their jobs or engaged in part-time jobs gone to? Isn't it a fact that they have returned back to their villages and are now willing to cultivate land to earn a living or grow to sustain their livelihood? That being so, it is an area that needs specific attention by government, now and in the immediate future, but I see very little of that reflected in His Excellency's address. Fiji is one of the island states in the Pacific, sir, which is like the rest except the bigger ones, prone to the effects of climate change. Fiji has approximately 330 islands, of which 110 are uninhabited, and that number will decrease as sea level and temperature increases. It is envisaged, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in the years to come, more of our maritime residents are expected to become marooned to the mainlands. This gradual but sure demographic shift is highly likely to cause a number of geopolitical and socio-economic problems which the UN Agenda 2030 seeks to address by way of the Sustainable Development Goals. While still on maritime development, Mr. Speaker, sir, the other pertinent issue that continues to create simmering tensions and sufferings for the outer islands residents is the shipping services, which we appreciate is still being partially paid by the state, but needs to be made more efficient. I am hopeful that the Honourable Minister for Infrastructure, Transport will look into these outstanding issues and redress accordingly. The other humble plea I wish to make the Honourable Minister for Infrastructure and Transport is the improvement in maritime public utilities, such as jetties damaged or left unattended for some time now. They are slowly but surely becoming an eyesore to public eyes, and worse still, occupational health and safety risk and potential hazards. Any assistance by way of remedial works in this respect will bring relief to the aggrieved people. The third and last issue that I wish to raise with respect to the maritime dwellers in Fiji is about the need for the Fiji Consumer and Commerce Commission to make an effort to monitor prices of several goods and services available to the people in the outer islands at an increased price, which is against the spirit of consumer rights and fair trading. I would urge the Honourable Minister for Trade, Industry and Commerce to look into addressing this matter urgently, given we are approaching the festive and hurricane season, as well as the beginning of the new school year in January 2021. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are in the early part of our hurricane season, and I pray to beseech the mercy of the Almighty Lord to save us from the wrath of natural as well as man-made disasters. That being so, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important that the government assures this nation that we have necessary support services to keep the nation informed and advised of disaster as and when they strike our country. It is also gratifying for the Honourable Minister for Communications to stand up and boast in this House about the success of the Walesi platform. That being so, it is important for this House and the people of Fiji to know how that platform could be one of the means and ways for messaging and news before, during and after the disaster, keeping in mind the limited appeal and impact upon the Walesi platform by the kind of disasters striking Fiji. In addition to messaging and news reporting, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important that the National Disaster Management Office of Fiji become a proactive partner in our public showcases and civic awareness program to outreach and network, create awareness and train people to develop resilience to climate change and natural disasters. Sir, I do not see such activities being conducted at the grassroots level anymore, in contrast to the past where it was a must. While still on disaster management, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to once again draw the attention of this government to the importance of developing community halls or other civic infrastructure which could be used in times of disaster to shelter people and provide them relief in case they have their dwelling damaged and destroyed in any of these disasters. This is becoming a challenge we have to recognize the poor quality of housing, those affected by previous disasters, able to rebuild their homes without assistance. My last limb of statement on this important subject, Mr. Speaker, sir, is in relation to emergency water supplies to rural and remote communities, which is now becoming a nationwide ongoing issue, needing the urgent attention and redress. Clean, regular pipe water is a necessity for human life, and it's a basic human right. And failure of the government to ensure speaks volume about the quality of leadership and governance. Just a fortnight ago, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Saukuru Dam, which supplies water to residents and all the civic and business houses from Nandi and Lautoka, which is the most heavily populated area in the West, reached its critical level. Thanks to the heavens for the rains which came a blessing to replenish and restore the water in the dam sufficiently. Now that leaves me to ask the Honourable Minister, confirm or deny whether the water at the Saukuru Dam in the recent past dry spell was indeed 7 meters down, and if yes, then whether there was a public announcement on this matter. Fiji, Mr. Speaker, sir, over the years, government have become heavily reliant on the tourism industry after the sugar industry saw the first signs of decline. This saw the public and private sector in the Western Division, especially to move away from sugar to tourism, creating as much jobs as the sugar industry was generating. This dual contribution from the lands of the West sustained our job market and the economy for a while, until the effects of the balloon-type socialist slanted Fiji First budgets began to take a toll on them. COVID-19 and the resultant economic meltdown was just an icing on the cake of destruction for our economy, in addition to the woes inflicted by gross undermining of the resource-based sectors, namely fisheries, forestry, copra, and the meat industries. While sugar industry reforms without an input from its key stakeholders, namely the landlords and the cane growers, has been a failure pending implementation of the recommendations of the Deloitte report, the step-brother treatment of our resource-based sectors and mismanagement, as well as the counterproductive results from the reorganization of the industries, such as mahogany, left all hopes high in the tourism sector, which was dashed by the impact of COVID-19. What is the solution now if the pandemic continues, or we have another such pandemic or disturbances in the Pacific, given the trade warfare between the economic giants involved? What will happen if the cane growers withdraw totally from cane farming after 2022? What is the answer to the failed reorganization and step-brotherly treatment of our resource-based sectors? This is further complicated and compounded by the impact of climate change and the fast developing mood of resignation and loss of sense of belonging. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are issues of soul-searching, and I see His Excellency, the President, does not sought to take these matters into consideration as per the address we are debating. Those that were made relevantly were purely banal or at best lip service. Is this the tribute this government now seeks to pay our head of state? In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have the following statements to make. Firstly, like every address from the throne, this speech is without doubt aimed at creating a feel-good impression, but the ground reality is otherwise. This is an insult to His Excellency the President and to the intelligence of the people of the land, because this government has failed to live up to its promises. That, to me, Mr. Speaker, sir, is masquerading with the mandate of the people. Secondly, sir, this government is suffering from policy paralysis, which has failed our economy more than the impact of COVID-19, and has lost direction and is floating like a rudderless ship. That is again contrary to the sentiment said in His Excellency's address we are debating here. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, sir, with none of the 25 reasons cited by the military coup in 2006 proven true, and this government caught up in the web of its own statements, it reflects very poorly on the accord of consistency and integrity of this government and its leadership. they have not been faithful to themselves, to this nation, and to His Excellency, the President. They are only concealing information, facts, and all their misdeeds under the guide and protection of their draconian legislations to evade public probity that explains the reasons for silencing dissent and those who question the authority. Mr. Speaker, sir, may I take this opportunity to thank all Fijians who are living abroad for the financial support rendered to their families and friends living in Fiji. On a cumulative basis, FDB's economic review for November showed that personal remittances rose by 7.3% to $521 million in the first 10 months of this year. For the month of October alone, personal remittances total a record of $69 million, an increase of 29.5% over the previous month, and an increase of 58.7% over October last year. Overall, remittances have performed well above expectations and contributed positively to foreign reserves. Fiji needs your support. With those words, Mr. Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to wish your good self and the Parliament Secretariat, all members of Parliament, and every Fijian in Fiji and those living overseas an enjoyable Christmas and a prosperous 2021. Thank you, sir.
I thank the